Hello, everybody. Welcome to Film Gold. This is episode 17, and we have the first returning guest, the man, the legend. You are a legend, mate. I'm not just saying that. You're a legend of film analysis.
Thank you.
Rob Ager, how are you, mate?
Fantastic, mate. It's lovely and sunny here, but I'm here doing this with you, and that's fine, you know.
There you go. You get to forget about the world for a couple of hours. All right. You were previously on episodes 8 and 9. We did a lovely sort of small town family drama called Snowtown. This is sort of equally dark, but it's not true, which is a good thing, because I think the horror of Snowtown was that, of course, it was true. And,
Yeah, we delved right to the dark depths with that one, you know. Yeah.
Yeah,
What was
we
the
did.
other one
Yeah.
we did? Did you say we'd done two before?
No, we just did the
Just
two-part.
did the one. Okay. Oh, the two parts to that one. I was going to say
Yeah.
there must be one I've forgotten. Okay. Yeah.
I'd have you on every week, mate, to be honest. But
Oh, cheers. Yeah. Well, the
you're
Snowtown one, I really enjoyed that. Fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah, good feedback.
that was good. I'll just refer listeners back to that as well, episodes 8 and 9, because at the beginning we talked about our film history, so we won't go through that again, but we did mention Movie Drome. You know, we were talking about that, if you remember.
Yeah.
This amazing series, and even though it's not on anymore, for the listeners, you can Google Movie Drome and you can actually see the list of all the films. So we talked about we both saw challenging films at a young age. I think you told me you saw Taxi Driver when you were 8 or something.
That and many others.
Yeah. Well, I saw Deer Hunter. I think I talked about that last time. I saw Deer Hunter at a young age, and we both credited our dads, I remember, for sort of being open enough to say, "Here you go, son. Come and watch,
Well,
watch Taxi Driver."
my dad was a huge fan of the Mao, you know, with the gun. That scene, my dad would watch that scene again and again. I was like, turn it off.
Yeah, our dads are like, "You're out of nappies now. You're ready for Raging Bull." Or yeah. Anyway, so the film on the docket tonight. Oh, sorry. Do you want to just can you just do the old perfunctory introduction, if you don't mind?
Okay.
You and your work.
All right, yeah. So, Rob Ager, do film analysis on YouTube. I've been doing this for, must be 12, 15 years, something like that. I got in on YouTube at the very early stages, built up an audience then, and now it's coming up to 200,000 subscribers, and something like, I don't know, 30, 50 million views between the different channels I've got. So yeah, I've carved out my own little niche on film analysis, and I did do video on Night of the Living Dead a long time ago, but it's not a public video, it's a paywall video, which you've actually seen, haven't you, because I sent it to you. So yeah, that's the upshot. Yeah.
Excellent. And you also, one of the other things we sort of bonded about, because I met you as a fan, if you remember, I think it was about 2011. We met in a cafe in Liverpool.
We both looked a lot younger then, didn't we?
Yeah, well, the thing I found that was really funny, this is really embarrassing, but for some reason, because you're from Liverpool, I sort of assumed you were a Beatles fan, which is ridiculous. And I got you to meet me on Matthew Street, you know, where the cavern is. And you said to me, well, I'm not actually a big Beatles fan. And I was like, what? Yeah. It's just ridiculously.
A lot of people get really disappointed at that. They get disappointed when I say I'm not into football as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we've met a few times, and last time we were in one of the pubs, Lark Lane, wasn't it? We were talking about films, and we'd had a couple. We hadn't had too much. We had a couple of cheeky beers, and we couldn't get the words out quick enough. We were like talking about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the film this afternoon, is Night of the Living Dead from 1968. So this is a horror film, obviously. It's got a little bit of sci-fi. It's a very influential film. It was made by an independent company called Image 10. And the thing about it, I think you've listened to the commentary as well. What's interesting is that this company was founded by, I think it's 5 people. It's George Romero. It was Carl Hardman and Marilyn Eastman who play Harry and Helen, the couple.
Oh, I didn't know Helen was one of the production people there as well. Okay.
As well, yeah. And one of the other guys is Johnny, who gets killed in the graveyard in the cemetery at the beginning. Wow. He was in the company. Yeah.
Right, okay. That's an aspect of the production history I hadn't looked at. Yeah.
Yeah, but what's lovely about it is that it's almost, when you watch it, I mean, as I said, I did watch your video, which you kindly sent to me, and I always remembered, like, it's sort of laughably cheap, and there's loads of continuity errors. But on this commentary I listened to, they're laughing at themselves. They're pointing them out themselves.
Yeah.
But for me, it just kind of works. I don't know, because the subject matter is so primitive, like the idea of humans eating each other in the most unglamorous, horrible way.
Yeah.
It kind of works. I don't know. Would it work better if it was in color and had a higher budget? What do you reckon?
I think for its time, a bit like the Psycho shower scene being in black and white, I think the gore in Night of the Living Dead required it to be black and white for its time.
Yeah,
Like you couldn't have had the Psycho shower scene in color with all that blood in the bath. So
yeah,
yeah, I think that was essential, and I suppose that the black and white allowed them to go ahead with the gore to a level that hadn't been done before. Um, there's just so many ways the film broke the mold, isn't there? I
absolutely.
don't know if you read this about the production history, but one of the weirdest things that I found was that the film was released on cinemas without an age rating. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
adults could take their kids, young kids, to see Night of the Living Dead, and kids were coming out traumatized by this. I don't know how the hell that happened, but
I'm
I was just
surprised.
freaked by that one.
That's weird, isn't it? But don't you think that sort of just the cheapness of it? It kind of looks like a student film, doesn't it? And because they were this small company, they're almost like film students, but obviously a bit older. I guess Romero was, I don't know, 30s or 40s when he made this. Um, it just seems to work for me. But anyway, before we get to that, when was the first time you saw this? And is this a film that you've seen a lot of times? Or?
Um, I, I can remember what I was thinking and feeling when I first saw it, but I can't remember the exact context. I
Mm,
think I was probably about 9 or 10 years old.
mm.
And I didn't find it particularly scary because I was also watching stuff like The Thing, and
As we've
you know,
mentioned, yeah.
so that had hardened my sensibilities. But
Yeah.
yeah, Night of the Living Dead always stood out from when I first saw it. It was a family favorite. It was really, really entertaining. I mean, there's a whole ton of things you can say about what makes the film good.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we'll breeze into all that. But yeah, I was about 10 years old, and still today,
Mm,
for me, Night of the Living Dead is the best zombie film ever made.
mm.
Um, yeah, yeah. So,
I mean, one of the things we talked about on this podcast, and I'm sure you and I have talked about it, is when you first see a film, and particularly if you're a kid, and it just sort of seeps into your consciousness, and it's hard to ever remove that. For me it was Jaws, for example, and I can look at Jaws now and say, there's a few things that a couple of plot holes here and there and stuff, but I remember seeing this. I used to watch stuff. I think I used to record stuff on Friday nights, and it was always stuff like 50s sci-fi, and I was massively drawn to old films for some reason. I still don't know why, to be honest. So I would have seen this about 11 or 12, and I just loved I loved the music, and I like the sort of limited setting film, where it's all in one place. Like we just did Rear Window, the last episode.
mm.
It's obviously a very different film to this, but the fact that it's all set in one place, I've always been attracted to that, and I'm not exactly sure why, but so I've always loved this, and the horror obviously comes from the gore and the zombies, and the idea that people who kind of look like humans are potentially going to eat you, because it's a bit different from animals, right?
Well, that was a massive change, wasn't it? From like zombie films before Night of the Living Dead were usually they were almost like ghost stories, weren't they? It was usually
Mm,
some form of spiritual possession involving voodoo, some or a dead person who comes back to life to take revenge on someone who did something bad to them in real life. So that was usually the
yeah.
framing. But I can't think of any zombie movies or stories before Night of the Living Dead that had
Mm,
it as a kind of like an infection that makes people want to eat each other alive. That seems to
mm.
be. I don't know if I'm wrong about this, but that seems to be completely new, and it changed the
Mm.
entire zombie thing forever.
Yeah, I hadn't really researched whether there were, because one thing we'll get to when we go through the film is that the rules kind of change with the zombies. They're supposed to be one thing, but then a couple of them act very out of character, but we'll get there. But I didn't really research, but I didn't feel like there was much before this that was doing what this film did. I think it did break the mold. Um, it was made in 1968, and we'll get on to the fact that obviously the main character is black, is African American. This was the year that Martin Luther King died, of course. Um, just before we get into the film, How many of the other ones in the Living Dead series have you seen, and where would they sit compared to this one? Would you say?
Well, I've seen Dawn of the Dead, of course, the
Mm.
original and the remake. Um, I like both of them for different reasons. I think I like the original. It had more original concepts and stuff. The remake was okay.
Mm.
Um, the Day of the Dead. I know most people seem to prefer Dawn of the Dead, the original, to all the other zombie films.
Mm.
I quite like Day of the Dead. I thought the special effects in that one were really gruesome, whereas the ones
Yeah.
in Dawn of the Dead were a little bit cartoonish looking for me.
Mm.
So Day of the Dead I really liked, and it had a very dark story. And then Romero's film Creepshow.
Oh yeah.
Seen that? That's got a
Yeah. Big
couple of zombie
favorite.
stories in it, that one, isn't it? And the zombie stories in that film break the rules. They talk, and I think at one point they actually um, jump space between rooms, like they magically disappear from one room and appear in the other.
Oh, I see.
So
Yeah.
they're more like ghosts. It's an interesting movie to watch. How Romero breaks his own zombie rules in that film and does something different with it. Yeah. But yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen loads and loads of other zombie films, including the recent ones, like the Italian ones, the Wreck 1 and 2. Have you seen those?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh,
No.
they're worth a watch. Yeah, yeah. They're sort of shot like Blair Witch Project with the found footage thing, and it's a
Yeah.
rare example of found footage horror that works. The Wreck films are pretty good. Doesn't really break the mold and do things originally, but
Mm.
um, the thing that for me with the Night of the Living Dead, one thing that makes me prefer it to virtually everything that's gone since is I like the slow zombies with the rigor mortis. They actually look like they're half dead. When you get these
Yeah.
zombie films where they run like athletes on a track,
Yeah.
it's like they're not dead. They're like
Yeah.
animals, you know. But that's another appeal, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. What I was going to say about the Living Dead series is that as you go progressively through the films, I saw the first three. As I said, I like the first three. I watched Land of the Dead and I was like, I'm out of here. This is getting stupid. It was that one where, Dennis Hopper was a completely stereotypical
Mm.
capitalist in his ivory tower. And what it was, through the films, the zombies get more and more, I don't know what the word is, able to think.
Mm.
Uh, which I can't get on board with that after a while. But I think Dawn of the Dead, the image I loved, I mean, I will never not laugh at this, is zombies in a shopping mall,
Oh yeah,
mindlessly picking up consumer items and sort of go, oh, I mean, how perfect is that? I mean,
brilliant.
it's
Yeah,
completely on the
absolutely.
nose, but I love it.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah, it's
that was
perfect.
like because that wasn't really there in Night of the Living Dead, was it? So much there wasn't a consumerism thing
No,
to it that I can see. So at least with
no.
Dawn of the Dead, he brought some fresh elements and social commentary into it that wasn't in the first film so much. So yeah, I really liked Dawn. In terms of social commentary, I would say Dawn of the Dead is probably the best of the lot. But for me,
Mm.
Night of the Living Dead works the best as a pure horror film. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are aspects to this. So we'll get to them. Yeah, but Dawn of the Dead, it's so like on the nose, as they say, But I love it. I just that image, it's always stuck with me. And I think Day of the Dead has got some message, but I honestly haven't seen that for years. But yeah, I kind of stopped at about Day of the Dead. The one after that, I couldn't stomach it.
Land of the
But
Dead didn't make much an impression on me either. Yeah.
really bad. Because yeah, anyway, let's get to it anyway. So we mentioned, as I said, it's a low budget film. So the film starts with this music. Let's maybe talk about the music of the film now. It changes at various times, but I just remember the first bit. It's very kind of ominous music. Was that original music, or did they get that from somewhere? Do you know?
From what I remember, they used various bits of music from other sources. Is that right? I think that's what they did.
Maybe. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, they plucked stuff from all over the place, bits of stock music,
Mm,
which is fine if you make the right choices in terms of choosing your stock music. Uh,
mm,
I mean, I remember like one of the interviews with Stanley Kubrick, and he was discussing music because he always used old classical pieces, didn't he?
yeah.
And he used to say, I don't know why people hire composers to make scores. He said, there's so much music already out there to choose from. and you can have the music in advance before you even make the film,
Yeah.
which is a strange approach to it. I do like an original score myself, so I don't agree with Kubrick on that.
I often say with music, unless it's a song, if it's a score, it's often when you don't notice it, but obviously you are noticing it, but you wouldn't be able to say what it is necessarily. If I wasn't doing this for a podcast, and someone said, "What's the music of Night of the Living Dead?" I probably wouldn't necessarily remember it.
No.
But now I watched the film with this nice commentary last night, and I was paying attention, and I mean, even the music sounds cheap, but I love it. The cheapness just works for me,
I mean, you mentioned the cheapness of it earlier on. I mean, I love the fact that it gives it a feeling of reality documentary. I mean, Night of the Living Dead's one of those great examples of how movies don't have to look all pristine and perfect. As long as you've got really good, solid story that is engaging, and you've got like really interesting characters and interactions with those characters, which Night of the Living Dead's got, of course. If you've got those elements, people will watch stuff that is shot on the most lame equipment. They'll put up with bad lighting. They'll put up with even bits of bad editing and bad sound effects and stuff. They will put up with a lot for a good story and good characters.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed is that the farmhouse, we'll get there in a sec, but the farmhouse they go to is fantastically detailed. I mean, well, presumably that's a house, isn't it? It's not a set, that's an actual house.
Yeah, I think it was an actual house, yeah.
Yeah, it must have been, yeah. But there's all stuff later on with them, when they put up the boards and everything, there's loads of continuity errors, but who cares? Like you say, it's the characters. The characters are good and the plot's good and everything.
Well, if the audience are paying attention to continuity, then obviously the story isn't doing much for them.
There you go, yeah. But this is a whole different world, isn't it? Now doing podcasts and things and really studying things in depth. But I found watching the film, I love it even more. I mean, like I said, I couldn't care less about little bits here and there.
I find it gets better over the years. It's especially
film,
looking at the strengths that it's got now, and the fact that so many high budget zombie movies have tried to beat it, and in my view they haven't.
Because I think they're going in the wrong direction, because what's great is how primitive it is. Because as I was saying earlier, there's nothing glamorous about what's happening in this film. It's awful. It's truly horrific. Okay, it's not true, of course.
Well, I mean, that's a funny thing that's sort of happened with a lot of the zombies. It's not just zombies in movies; it's zombies in video games. The gore levels have gone up and up and up. Actually, I'm wrong about that. I think the gore levels peaked with Day of the Dead, because if you go back and watch that one, it's savage. Like people, you can see all the insides getting torn out and eaten and stuff. I think the gore levels have come down a bit, but the whole zombie genre has changed from horror to action. Now it's all people shooting zombies and let's hit them on the head with baseball bats. And most of the gore is stuff that is done to the zombies instead of to the human characters.
Oh, really?
And if somebody gets eaten by zombies in a modern zombie movie, you don't really see it. You just can see them scream and get dragged and pulled away.
Yeah.
Whereas Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, you actually saw them physically getting ripped to pieces, So yeah, I think the emphasis on action is a big change, and it was kind of cool at first. I mean, Dawn of the Dead had some of that, didn't it? The action thing. So I suppose we can blame Romero for that. But I think it's become too focused on violent action. And the zombies have gone from being the dead to basically being rabid animals. They run fast, they growl like animals, and to me, they're not really zombies anymore. So
that's interesting, yeah. Because like I was saying, the horror is because they look like humans, so it's actually our kind potentially cannibalizing us. Yeah. All right. Let's get to the plot. So we have Barbara, who I think she's a really good actress, but unfortunately, from about 20 minutes in, she just has to look catatonic and talk like a baby. But so you get the first scene. So it's Johnny and Barbara. Now, you sent me one of your videos, and give us your theory. What was your theory about Johnny and Barbara? They're visiting their father. Johnny starts to wind Barbara up about something about being afraid,
Yeah,
and then he
afraid
says,
of
"Oh
the
look,
dead, and yeah.
yeah." He says, "Oh look, someone's coming to get you." And then we get the first zombie, which we'll talk about in a second, who doesn't follow the rules at all of the later ones.
Yeah, he doesn't.
But what's your theory about what happens there?
Well, Barbara's with her brother, isn't she, when she visits the cemetery? And
Yeah.
why would he visit him? Was it the
To
anniversary
put,
of Dad's
it's
death?
the anniversary of the father's death, so they're putting flowers on the grave. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, okay, so to preface this theory, can I just make a reference to Romero's other zombie film, Creepshow? Because this is important, because this backs up that theory quite strongly, I think. Do you remember Creepshow?
Oh, very well. Yeah, I've seen it loads of times. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
the first episode in that film had a father zombie who comes back from the dead and takes revenge on the family who wanted his money. And I think his own daughter insults him at his grave when she's sat there, she's drinking booze at his grave on the anniversary of his death. And she says some insulting things to his gravestone, and then he comes out the grave and attacks her and chokes her to death. Now, so yeah, that's George A. Romero, who did Night of the Living Dead. But you know, back in Night of the Living Dead, you had this thing where again they were visiting the father's grave, and it was Barbara, the young girl character, and her brother. And the brother is saying a lot of insulting things about the dad. I can't remember the exact lines, but he's basically saying that the guy was useless. He was why the hell do we even visit this guy?
Why do we have to blow Sunday on this? Because they've obviously driven a couple of hours or something to get there.
Yeah, and he says a lot of insulting things to his dad.
You think I want to blow Sunday on a scene like this? You know, I figure we're either going to have to move Mother out here or move the grave into Pittsburgh. Look at this thing. We still remember. I don't. You know, I don't even remember what the man looks like. Each year we spend good money on these things. We come out here and the one from last year's gone. Hey, come on, Barb. Church was this morning, huh?
But unlike Creepshow, we don't actually get the father come out of the grave. Instead, he points to this old guy zombie who is wandering around in the graveyard, and he's never announced as the father. And I'm not saying he literally is the father, but my impression of that is that he represents the anger of the father, taking revenge against Barbara's brother for insulting the dead dad. And when that zombie comes along, there's lightning and thunder, like anger, and he doesn't look like a zombie. He's got no bite marks on him. Nobody's at him. How did he become a zombie? And the first thing he does is he kills
Johnny.
Johnny, the brother, hits his head on a gravestone, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
And then
they're scrapping, and then Johnny hits his head, and
Then he spends ages chasing Barbara, and I just got a whole vibe from that you know the characters had insulted the dead, and in this particular instance, the dead, the first zombie of the film, is coming back to take revenge against the living who don't respect the dead. And then the zombies later on go off in other thematic directions, but I thought that was a good starting point.
Yeah. So like I said, this first zombie, he's much more kind of animated. Like, I mean, well, not animated like facially, but he moves quicker. He doesn't eat Johnny as well. Like, why doesn't he eat Johnny? After Johnny died? This is like the rules get scrambled. But like you said,
he just wants to kill, doesn't he? He doesn't want to eat.
Yeah, and then we get kind of I wouldn't say it's a classic action sequence or anything, but Barbara takes off her shoes and she's sprinting, and it's funny to see that if you think about how she gets what she's like about 20 minutes later. So she goes to this abandoned house, and another bit I didn't quite understand. She goes up to the stairs. Remember, there's a corpse on the stairs, and the blood's dripping down. But what happens to that corpse? I mean, why doesn't that corpse animate? I don't know. Is there a...
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense.
From what I remember, the impression I got from that was that corpse had its brain eaten because it's got injuries to the head, but not to the rest of the body. So it's never really stated, but that was the impression I got, that corpse couldn't become a zombie because its brain was at. It's the only sense I could make of it. Oh, by the way, can we just, there's one thing I just remembered that wants to mention
Yeah,
about
sure.
that first zombie. He does something which is also breaks the rules, where he picks up a brick or a stone to smash a window, and he's actually trying to pull the handle on the car to get to it. So he remembers how to use a handle, so he's definitely more human in his behavior. But I mean, I think one of the things I really like about that and how it transfers into the later zombies is the whole movie has got a very gradual series of revelations of what the plot is. And so we only find out later in the film that the zombies actually eat people.
Yes.
And we only find out later that they're actually dead. So I think having him just appear to be a madman at the beginning, it doesn't make sense in a basic plot sense, but it helps give the film that gradual revelation thing. The zombies change as the story goes on.
Oh, interesting. So we don't know, because we find out with the characters, which I want to mention later, this genius idea with the radio and the TV. I just think that's fantastic. But anyway, she comes to the house, and then we get the entrance of Ben. Now, there's just so much to say about this. I mean, so we got Dwayne Jones, and I put in my notes, it was his one great contribution to film history, because he barely made anything, but he made such an incredible impression. Now,
could have been a big star, couldn't he? He was great.
I mean, because I mean, he's a handsome guy, he's kind of charismatic, but if you take the character himself, I mean, he's a handsome guy, he's sort of well dressed, and quite well dressed anyway, but he's also sort of practical and resourceful. And we kind of get, what we get in this film is, on the commentary, they said, we weren't making a statement by having a black guy as the main character. But I contend that whether or not they meant to, you're making a political statement just by never mentioning that he's black in 1968. Don't you think? You're making a statement by not making a statement.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that they were not aware that casting a black guy in the lead role was going to make people think about the issue. But I love the way they done it. I mean, if I was to pick out a handful of my favorite movies that handle racial issues, I would pick Night of the Living Dead as being one of the top 5. And as I'm sure you've read from the script and stuff, the character was originally written as just a white guy, hillbilly, white trash.
Sort of white trash,
and then they put Dwayne Jones in the role, but they didn't change any of the dialogue or behavior. So to me, that is such an even better anti-racial statement, to just... Instead of trying to force the issue down people's throats, just take a standard hero character role and just stick a black guy in the role, and no one ever mentions his race. And even the guy who he argues with endlessly, Harry, and Harry insults everybody, doesn't he? Even he never ever mentions.
Doesn't mention it once.
Yeah, and to me that is so much more a powerful anti-racist statement, because it's like saying, look, true anti-racism, you just don't perceive people as their race. You just, here's a person, and the skin color is irrelevant. And to me, that's the better approach.
Well, it's like that thing, Stephen Fry has often talked about the Catholic Church, against the Catholic Church. And he said, the Catholic Church are obsessed with sex because they're always thinking about sex, even to say that they don't think it's right. So it's almost like the same thing. People who go on about racism all the time, I don't think it's very effective, because you're just going on about it all the time. You're kind of forcing the issue. I totally agree with you. They're making such a great point by not mentioning it. I mean, genius. What they said on the commentary was that this company, Image 10, they prided themselves on, I think they said, giving work to, I don't even know what the right word is, not out of work actors, but actors who get less chance. And I guess in the 60s, particularly like pre-Civil Rights Act, a black actor, just by the color of his skin, would have less opportunity. So I think, and they just said Dwayne Jones gave the best audition. That's what they said. So,
he is, and you see it in the movie.
It's brilliant.
He wasn't cast as a tokenism. And today, a lot of it's tokenism, isn't it? People are picked for a role just because we want to meet a quota, but there was no quota with this film. That makes it an even better anti-racist statement. We just cast him because he was talented, not because of his color. It's great.
If I could just tell a little, very brief story. My last girlfriend was black, and still is, in fact. She's from New York, and I met her in Spain when we were both teachers. And what I liked about it is that we could talk about racial issues, and she could also have a sense of humor about it. Like I showed her White Men Can't Jump.
Oh,
So
great.
you're talking about brilliant ways to handle the race issue. That's a brilliant comedic way, and she really liked it. But she used to work in this school, and they all used to speak Spanish at 100 miles an hour because Spanish is always very, very spoken very quickly. And her Spanish was pretty good, but they didn't. She used to go to teachers' meetings, but they didn't used to involve her particularly for whatever reason. I'm not saying it was a race thing. And then they said, "Oh, we want you to get involved in this project we're doing." And she was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So she went to the meeting, and then halfway through, she heard the word diversidad, which is Spanish for diversity, and she's thinking, "Oh my god!" Yeah. But like I say, she could have a sense of humor about it. Like she told me the story, you know. But
the humor definitely goes a long way. I mean, actually, I was talking to my girlfriend last night about this one. 48 Hours, the movie. Nick Nolte, Eddie Murphy. That is amazing on the race front because I mean they rip each other. They call each other every racial slur under the sun, and yet they end up best buddies in it. And I think like the humor approach in that it takes all of the audience tension about racial conflict and it turns it into something funny. And you get to humor is a great way of countering anger. A person can't be amused and angry at the same time. If you can take an angry person and make them laugh, it's such a release. And you know, movies like 48 Hours, White Men Can't Jump, and even that one called White Chicks. Did you ever see that?
No, I haven't seen
There's I can't remember the names, and there's two black comedian actors in America, and in this movie they basically they put makeup on and pretend to be white girls, and they take the piss out of white girls, and you know, and I could look at that and say, oh, that's racist, but I thought the film was pretty funny myself. You know, it got bad reviews, but had me laughing.
Right. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so yeah, the other thing I love about this film, like I said, they discover there's a radio, and they do this brilliant thing where you get sort of 5 minutes of basically Ben doing a load of carpentry, but with the radio in the background. I was thinking that's what people do, you know, when you're doing DIY in your house, you have the radio in the background. But the genius idea of informing us as the audience at the same time that the characters are learning.
At this hour, we repeat, these are the facts as we know them. There is an epidemic of mass murder being committed by a virtual army of unidentified assassins. The murders are taking place in villages, cities, rural homes, and suburbs with no apparent pattern or reason for the slayings. And things that look like people but act like animals. Some eyewitnesses tell of seeing victims who look as though they had been torn apart. This whole...
I was trying to think if that had ever been done. I don't know every film that had gone
unusual,
before this, but I don't think it had been done.
It's great because I mean I always think like the best movies keep the runtime short by making sure that each individual scene achieves multiple objectives at once, communicates multiple plot points.
Yes.
If you've got a scene and it only establishes one plot point, that's a bit, it's not economical. So, you know, you can see that visually you've got one story. He's gathering resources. He finds a gun. He's hammering nails into walls and doors to make the place safe. And at the same time, you got the radio that's basically informing the audience of the plot of the movie at the same time.
Very clever,
and even if you're not consciously paying attention to that radio, you're still subconsciously picking up on the scenario of what's going on. And yeah, so they do that with the radio, don't they? I think they do it with the TV as well at some point.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And then, but because it's TV, because most people, I suppose they've proved scientifically that most people are visual learners. So you get a bit of radio and then it moves to the TV, and you know, the audience, we're kind of happy because we get to watch a bit of TV as well, as well as watching the film. Just a final thing on the race issue, because I don't, like I say, I want to make a political statement by not talking about it too much, except at the very end, because it kind of comes up then. But of course, in Dawn of the Dead, he also has a black hero, and this time he survives, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But again, he seems like an intelligent person, so I think they've made that choice.
If I remember rightly, in Dawn of the Dead, they also didn't have much dialogue about the fact that he was black.
No, I think this is going from.
There was a racist character at the beginning who's a cop who goes around killing people. Yeah, Yeah, but
Yeah,
after
but it's
that, it
not.
stopped.
Yeah, but it's not directed against that character.
Yeah,
You get a racist guy at the beginning of the film.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, I kind of I've written in my notes. It's kind of the Ben and Barbara love story for about 10 minutes, because I think there's a nice chemistry, because he's kind of you mentioned in your video that you found from the script that the original trucker, who was originally the character, has kids. So and it's funny that various characters, they all start babying Barbara, don't they? Because they realise she's completely out of it. So
Yeah,
they
yeah.
sort of now, oh yes, Barbara, we're going to go downstairs now, Barbara. But I
Yeah.
kind of love the way he's kind of paternal, and then unfortunately they have a fight, like they actually have a physical fight and hit each
Yeah, so
other,
doesn't he? Yeah, yeah.
because she doesn't want to believe that Johnny has died, and that comes up later as well. Very clever. But the thing you were saying about achieving more than one thing, I remember watching an analysis of, Strangers on a Train, the Hitchcock film.
You know what? I don't think I've actually seen that one. I know what.
Ah, right. It's the one where they swap murders. One of the guy turns out to be a psychopath. Anyway, so he starts stalking the other guy's ex-wife, or the person he's trying to divorce, and he stalks her follows her to a fairground.
Hmm.
But just very briefly, what they achieve is that you get the plot of him following her, but she spends the whole night with two guys who are kind of both after her, and you get the idea she's a bit of a floozy, which absolutely doesn't mean she deserves to die, but it's just the idea. I remember watching someone analysing it. You're absolutely right. The clever films, they achieve more than one thing with one scene.
Well, you just brought up something there that this wasn't in my study that I did. You just sort of raised it then. I haven't even thought of it, but yeah, I mean, Barbara is basically reduced to a child state in the film, isn't she? Yeah, I mean that's not difficult to notice. But I never really thought about Ben taking the father role for her, which is interesting because her story started with the anger of a father in the graveyard at the beginning, a father type zombie trying to kill her. And then Ben takes over as a father substitute. I don't think that that's intentional. It's just an interesting little connection, what you just brought up for me. Yeah.
It could be like an instinct they had, maybe they didn't mean it intentionally, but it kind of
Yeah.
works. Because even later on, Ben and Harry, who's the sort of almost like the antagonist. Oh, I suppose the zombies are the antagonists in the end, but Harry's a kind of antagonist to our hero. There's even a point where he tries to get Barbara to go downstairs, and Ben's like, "Oh, leave the girl alone," kind of thing. So they're even kind of fighting over her in a way, but not. I would say again more in a kind of who wants to be her father, or not in a sexual way, but in a kind of, oh, I think she should go downstairs. No, man, she's staying up here. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So it's almost
very
like
clever.
it's like a pride thing between them at that point, isn't it? Who's going to
Yeah.
be the father to this girl? I'm the leader. I will father the girl. And it's like the issue of where the girl is best being safe isn't really raised. I mean, in a way, I would agree with Harry on that one. Because she's so useless and traumatized, why not just take her down to the cellar where she's more safe?
Yeah. Of course, then you got the sick child as well. I always, for some reason, I always forget about that until the child does something at the end of the film, which is quite memorable, with
Yeah.
a trowel. Anyway, yes. So what do we get to then? Yeah. So I was gonna say we get Ben and Barbara. There's a bit of chemistry there, but they have a fight, and then do you remember the bit with the music box? That kid's music box.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice bit.
Is
Barbara's
that where
kind of almost
she's wandering
hypnotized.
around the house and she finds a music box and just
Yeah,
makes it play? Yeah.
yeah. She presses or winds it
And it
up or
makes like
something.
nursery melodies, doesn't it? Yeah, I
Absolutely.
thought that was a great way of just conveying the fact that she had sort of regressed to
Yeah,
a baby mentality. And yeah,
yeah,
if I remember rightly, she starts like touching the walls and like she's a
mm,
kid finding her way around.
yeah,
And I think later on, there's a moment where she's on the couch and she's just fiddling with like some fabric on the couch, like a baby or a
yeah.
toddler is fascinated with materials. Yeah, so it's really the age regression thing with her character. I think it's done very, very well.
But also the way she talks. Do you remember later on she goes, "Johnny and I went to the graveyard, and Johnny," and she starts. I think you mentioned on your video you said something about when traumatized people are speaking, they often just talk about, they don't get to the main facts. They just talk about a load of just random stuff. And she said,
Yeah.
Johnny said, no, we don't have time to go to the cemetery, or whatever she says. But it's very funny. Yeah. I'm
So
really
true to
impressed.
life. Yeah, it's true to real trauma. You know, so
Right.
that's, I mean, that's quite an interesting aspect. It's like most movies don't have trauma, that kind of trauma portrayed as realistically. And it just made me wonder what in Romero's experience, or whether it was the actress's experience, gave them that kind of insight into trauma to portray it that way.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. Yeah, it's very impressive, isn't it?
We came to put a wreath on my father's grave, Johnny, and he said, "Can I have some candy, Barbara?" We didn't have any. Oh, it's hot in here. Hot. And then this man started walking up the road.
And one of the lines I like, also the thing I like about Ben, because I always liked him as a guy. I mean, okay, he hit Barbara after she hit him. I mean, you can make of that what you want, but he says, there's a point where he says, I know you're afraid, I'm afraid as well. And generally, when do you get a hero who says, I'm afraid? You know, even that is unusual, you know?
Yeah.
And particularly, I don't know if it's a modern thing. I think it's always been the case. You know, you never saw, I don't know, Humphrey Bogart or Clark Gable or anyone. I think Brando was the first one, because I'm a huge Brando fan. He was almost one of the first leading actors to show vulnerability. And so I like that little touch with Dwayne Jones as well. I think that's really clever.
Yeah.
So we get the radio, as we've already talked about. We learn a bit along with the characters. And then the next thing you know, Barbara's staring at the radio, and then you get this they were laughing at their own film. There's a really shaky zoom in, like it starts going like this. And then suddenly you get Tom, Harry, Helen, and Judy. So you've got Harry and Helen, who are the unhappily married couple. Tom and Judy are the young couple. And essentially from here you get this sort of ego clash of the alpha males, you know. And I think you've done videos before, and I've talked about this, about kind of how much bullshit there is of left and right. You know, people talk about, oh, you're from the left, you're from the right. But you kind of get the impression in a very general way that if we did hear the political opinions of these people, Ben would probably be a liberal, and Harry, you get the feeling, was perhaps a bit more bigoted, or sort of, perhaps I'm speculating.
Maybe, yeah. I hadn't really thought of it that way. I think I'd have to watch the film with that in mind again. I mean, I suppose like the fact that Ben is a black character, you're automatically going to assume that he's on the liberal side. Although that's not always true in real life, is it? You know, sometimes.
No, it isn't. But I think statistically, you could say African Americans tend to vote for the Democrats in America. I mean,
especially back then, he would probably be inclined that way. And the whole Ben versus Harry thing, I find it was one of the greatest aspects of the movie, because it's very easy to look at the Harry character and say, well, you know, he's rude and insulting, and his body language is so aggressive. He constantly looks like he's going to punch someone, and he's always gritting his teeth at people. He really comes off as it's a great performance. Love it. And he was one of the producers, as you said, wasn't he? Yeah. But at the same time, I think there's aspects of Harry that are quite good. At times he is quite caring, and his problem is the ego clash with Ben for the alpha male thing. But apart from that, he's basically an okay guy. But then you get the thing with the wife, and whether or not they've got an unhappy marriage. So he has got problems, but at the same time, you've got Ben shows problems at various points in the story. He makes mistakes, doesn't he? His plans don't always work, and there's moments where Harry's plans seem to be the ones that should have been opted for. Anyway, I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say there's an ultimate irony at the end of the film, but we'll get there. Yeah, which is again, it's very good. But yeah,
But
they're
generally, that
nuanced.
whole thing of taking the hero and villain character and making them not so black and white,
Black
so
and
to
white.
speak.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
they've got the black and white reversed, haven't they?
yeah.
But given the villain some good aspects to themselves and the hero some bad aspects, it's realistic, it's convincing, it's more interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably less commercial. That's the reality, isn't it? You know,
Mhm.
those more nuanced films, they tend to be less commercial. But
Yeah.
so good for Romero. But yeah, you're absolutely right, because Ben has flaws. You know, I mean, not only does he hit Barbara, but again, you made a great point in your video that in fact the ego clash, everybody loses in the end. Not necessarily directly because of it, but they make bad choices, and it's a good. Again, it's a comment. Whether they meant to do it, we don't really know. But it's almost a comment on, if you do things for ego purposes, then maybe everyone's going to lose.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, yeah, a strong argument could be made that the characters could have survived in the film if they didn't have the ego clash between those two guys.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, and I also like the Harry and Helen relationship. I think it's very interesting, and the very telling line is because Harry's adamant they're going to stay in the cellar, and then he's talking to Helen about it, and then he mentions a radio, and Helen goes, "Well, they got a radio, and we're down here. Let's get up there." And she says, and then she says, we may not enjoy living together, but dying together is not going to solve anything. Which is a great line. Great line.
That was good. Yeah. Did you get the vibe there that in the basement, that his family being sort of locked up down there, even though it was like, although on a plot level it was kind of his way of trying to save them from zombies, I took it as a kind of a metaphor of that's how he keeps his family imprisoned generally anyway. Regular life.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw it that way.
Yeah, it could well be. Yeah. I think I get the feeling that, like I say, I don't think he's a terrible person. Although, later on, he grabs, if you remember a bit later on, he grabs the gun instead of helping them. When the zombies are nearly in the house and they're trying to get them away, Harry takes the opportunity to grab the gun, and basically so everyone will do what he wants. So I don't think he's inherently evil, but I think maybe that situation would bring out, who knows how we'd behave. We all want to behave. We all want to believe we'd behave well, but, Well,
especially with the fear of actually being eaten alive by zombies, that's going to bring out a lot of dark stuff in people, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Just something. God knows what I'd do in a situation like that.
Yeah. On a lighter note, do you remember that there's a little shot of one of the zombies eating a bug? Do you remember that? Eats an insect.
Oh yeah. Pulls it off the tree.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, the thing I was going to say was that because they had a low budget and they had this production company, and basically most of the zombies were their mates or local people, and a lot of the zombies were also mannequins. And in this commentary, they point them out. The zombie who eats the bug is actually Helen. It's the same actress who plays Helen. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, when they were doing the commentary, they're going, Marilyn. She's called Marilyn Eastman. She's like, Marilyn, that's you. And she's like, yeah, don't tell everyone, Harry, the actor Harry, is actually called Carl Hardman as well. So Hardman.
That's a great name, isn't it?
That's obviously not. He obviously didn't invent that. It was his parents, but but he came across as a really kind of nice guy, and he said, in fact, he made the choice to make Harry very frenetic to contrast Ben. That was an actor choice because Dwayne Jones was playing it so kind of cool the whole time. Yeah. So,
but that's. I've been writing a lot of stuff. I've just finished writing a new video on the movie The Black Hole, the science fiction film, and as part of that, there was a flaw in that film which contrasts strongly with the Night of the Living Dead. Is that the human characters in that movie are kind of bland. They don't have enough conflict with each other, and they don't have enough ideological and behavioral differences. If you look at a movie like Star Wars, all your central characters are very different to each other, and they've all got different philosophy, different rules on how they live, even though they're all the good guys. And a lot of the drama, and especially humor in Star Wars, and this is true of Night of the Living Dead, I think, stems from the fact that you've got these characters who are so different to each other, all stuck trying to deal with the same scenario, but each person having a different approach to the situation and competing over whose approach we're going to take. It works in Star Wars, it works in Night of the Living Dead. Yeah.
And I think you said in your video as well, and I agree with you, like the characters are good enough that also you get, like, later on you get sequences where you get a couple of minutes of, again, they're doing a bit of carpentry and they got this device of the radio, and then we get the TV, and again it's just brilliant, you know, because we get to watch a bit of TV. And one funny thing is that, you know, on the TV they have the rescue centers with the phone numbers. They actually use real places. I don't know, I don't have much knowledge of Pennsylvania, to be honest, but some of the places were real because they wanted to make it authentic, but they were worried that you might get a War of the Worlds scenario when it's on TV.
Up those places.
Yeah, you get people ringing up going, "Oh, what's going on? There's zombies." Because again, in those days, it wasn't, you know, there wasn't social media and everything, you know, and someone would watch something on TV and conceivably might think it's actually happening. I mean, War of the Worlds sounds ridiculous, but it, you know, it happened, didn't it? You know, thousands of people apparently fleeing their houses. Do you think Orson Welles knew what he was doing there? I feel like he's a bit of a trickster, wasn't he? What do you reckon?
I don't know on that one. I know about it, but I've never really read in great detail about what happened there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love Orson Welles anyway. I read a couple of biographies on him, and I know some people think he was like egotistical and stuff, but I can understand him being egotistical because he was so smart and creative. I mean, I won't go into it, but if you read his biographies, the guy was pretty amazing. You know, actually, on the racial thing, I don't know if you know about this with Orson Welles, but you know, Dr. Faust, the play. What's that play called?
Dr. Faustus.
Is it called Dr. Faust?
I don't know if that's a character of the play, but I know
it's a character, isn't it? Yeah, I can't remember the name of the play, but everybody knows the Dr. Faust character. Well, anyway, that stage play had been famous for a long time. And Orson Welles decided to do a stage play version with an all-black cast.
Yeah,
you know about that, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
And toured it, and it was groundbreaking. I wish I could have been there to see that play. It would have been amazing. I mean, there's the weird element where the lead actor, I think he got sick or something and he left. So Orson Welles stepped in and actually blacked up and played the lead role, which some people would look and say, "Oh, that's insulting." But I think what he did overall there was a really powerful thing on the racial front, you know. Yeah, but I like Orson Welles.
Well, so do I. I mean, like I say, with the ego and everything, he apparently, I mean, I read the Simon Callow one. That's a really good biography. Apparently, he'd sort of rewritten the rules of theatre and radio before he even made Citizen Kane. He made Kane when he was 26 or whatever he was.
Yeah,
so I'm not surprised, to be honest.
The
War of the Worlds.
Orson Welles short films are supposed to be absolutely amazing and groundbreaking as well, but I've never seen them.
Oh, are they? Right. No, what was I going to say? Yeah, with War of the Worlds, basically, yeah, it was a Mercury radio production. And obviously at the beginning they said this is a production of H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds. They made it clear. But obviously, you know, people can turn on the radio halfway through. And I don't know what the numbers were, but apparently thousands of people were fleeing their homes. I mean, America's got a lot of people, so that might not necessarily be a big percentage. And then there is video of him going on TV. You know, his first sort of TV exposure was kind of apologizing / explaining that. But yeah, he was amazing. Yeah, I love Orson Welles. We can do an Orson Welles film at some point if you want.
Oh, Citizen Kane, please.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, why not? We've got to do the granddaddy of films. Okay, so yeah, they find a TV, and then we get all this stuff about. Let me read this. The reanimations might be due to radiation from a space probe that exploded in the Earth's atmosphere on the way back from Venus. Now, is there anything metaphorical going on there, or do you think it's just a standard scientific explanation?
You might need to remind me on some of this because it's been a while since I wrote my study of it.
Yeah, I mean,
was radiation presented in the movie as the only scientific explanation, or was there another explanation given?
I think on the TV they say I was believed to be or something like that, because I wasn't, when I was watching the commentary yesterday. I didn't get the subtitles option, so I was just listening to what they were talking about.
Yeah.
You get this great documentary footage. Remember when they're interviewing the scientists, and George Romero is actually the interviewer.
Yeah.
This documentary stuff is great. I love it because I love documentaries, but I love films that kind of act like documentaries.
Movies that have fake documentaries in them.
Yeah, oh,
It's
it's
a
brilliant.
complex subject, isn't it?
It's brilliant.
The whole explanation for why the zombies are there. I don't know if there was any kind of statement about anything scientific. I personally, I don't think there was. If there was, it was a small afterthought. But I mean, I find it quite interesting, the whole issue of how different zombie stories handle trying to give a reasoning for, the zombies. Like I said earlier, it used to be spiritual possession or voodoo rituals bringing the dead back to life, and it was all magical. And then as time went on, audiences weren't believing in that stuff very much. And yet, I suppose Night of the Living Dead broke from zombie traditions by trying to give a scientific explanation of radiation causing the problems.
Yes.
But I like the fact that the film only threw it in as a possibility. It didn't say this is what happened. It was just touted as a possibility for the audience to think about. And that's great, because it means the film doesn't have to commit to an explanation that is actually stupid anyway. How is radiation going to create zombies?
Who knows?
So an audience can choose to accept or reject that idea. And either way, it works in film's favor. So I love that.
It's interesting that the story is unfolding in the TV studio, in the film. The sort of TV program within the film. We're just hearing, and the other thing about it is funny is that, again, a lot of the actors in that studio were their mates from this, from this small production company. And also, I love how cheap it looks, because I won't go too much on this tangent, but do you remember? Have you seen that footage of when Walter Cronkite announces JFK's died, and he puts down his glasses? And
I don't think I've seen that clip.
Oh, it's a good one, yeah. It's obviously it's a sad day, but TV in those days was more human. It was more. So Walter Cronkite puts down his glasses and looks like he's about to burst into tears, because he's literally just heard the confirmation that JFK's died. And I was just listening to a podcast where they were reviewing. I haven't seen it, but a biopic of Roger Ailes, who was the Fox News guy. And they were just talking about how horribly slick TV news is, and so I like the cheapness, because it's kind of human,
Yeah.
And news was a bit more like that then,
Yeah.
and so I love that as well. But the reason I mention that is because I think last time you were on, actually, we just touched on stuff like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Incredible Shrinking Man and stuff, and they always seem to use. Because in Incredible Shrinking Man, he goes through a cloud or something. That's why he starts shrinking, isn't it? Something like that.
It's a ridiculous plot idea, isn't it? But just get
of
the ball rolling.
Of course, yeah. But Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the idea, these pods take over the bodies, and people, they look like exactly the same person, but there's a lack of emotion. That was used as sort of propaganda against communists. So the idea that if you become a communist, you'll look the same as you normally do, but you'll have kind of a lack of emotion.
Yeah.
And also,
that's a form of propaganda that I would agree with.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Not that I don't buy into any political ideologies, by the way. As far as I'm concerned, you could apply that metaphor to almost any ideology.
Yeah. But it's interesting with Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because the main character was played by Kevin McCarthy, and that was when the McCarthy witch hunts were on.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know if he got cast for that reason, but so let's just go forward a bit with the plot. So I'm kind of reading from Wikipedia. Ben devises a plan to obtain medical supplies for Karen, who's the kid in the basement, transport the group to a rescue centre by refueling his truck. There's this really lovely scene with Tom and Judy, the young couple. again, I think the chemistry's great because they're, you know, they're. I don't want to sound awful, but they're probably not the most intelligent. They're kind of a simple couple, let's
Yeah,
say.
yeah, they're very sweet, very simple, you know.
Yeah, but Tom's this kind of nice, is this young guy who's in the middle of Ben and Harry, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know, he's always in the middle of their sort of ego clash, as we said. And another interesting thing is that suddenly they start working together. You know, because Harry's upstairs with the Molotov cocktails. Again, why didn't he come across that body on the stairs? Anyway, let's not think about that. So he's tossing the Molotov cocktails. Judy's not going to go out with them, and then she suddenly decides she is. So then you get this great action scene when they go out, and there's the three of them. They get to the truck. I think what happens is Tom can't undo the lock on the pump.
Yeah, yeah, he's got the keys, hasn't he? Yeah.
And it doesn't work. So Ben shoots the pump, and then I think Tom. I've written down here. Ben's got this.
Yeah, he accidentally spills the petrol all over the car, doesn't he? Yeah.
That's it. So the car's on fire, and then Judy's sleeve gets caught, so they can't get out, and then it explodes. And it's genuine, you know, it's a genuinely shocking moment and quite a good action scene. And then Ben has to get his way back to the farmhouse just with this torch that he's made out of a piece of furniture with a cloth. It's brilliant.
I remember, like, the very first time I saw the movie, that whole sequence, I was gripped. I was like, oh my God, he's now on his own in the dark out there with hordes of them around him. How the hell's he going to get? Yeah, that was...
It's so scary. Yeah.
Very powerful. Yeah.
We mentioned Creepshow earlier. I will put in the show notes your fantastic... You did that video on the last bit of Creepshow with E.G. Marshall and the cockroaches.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. What a great sequence and a great video.
And again, the racism themes, as you know, that whole sequence, the cockroaches, basically, where the rich white guy who's the lead, well, he's the only character in the story, really. And basically he perceives all of the black people as cockroaches. And he's trying to squash them and everything, and they all come and kill him at the end, you know. Yeah,
because there's a black maintenance man. He's the
he
only doesn't make a racial slur, but you get the implication that he doesn't have respect for these guys.
He says to him, people in your... There's a really sarcastic line. He says, I've noticed that people in the service jobs usually go quite far. People like you, people of people of colour, And it just establishes that. But that's the only other character, the actor that you see is the black janitor guy, you know. So, but I mean, that's, you know, again, it's Romero. It's a full-on anti-racist statement, even though he said he didn't mean it with Night of the Living Dead. So.
I think he did. But what I was going to say was that the scary thing about insects, like whether they're cockroaches, is the accumulation of thousands of them. And that was the point I was making with these zombies. Like, you could take one of them on very easily, but when you just got hundreds of them, you know, it's the accumulative power of these slow-moving zombies just circling you. It's just
swarm.
It's true horror. It's true horror.
And I think that's another reason why I think it works better for zombie movies if you have the zombies that move slowly, because then you can have tons of them. Yeah.
And you get the horror of things that you could easily defeat on their own, but together. Not that they're working together. That was my criticism. I think it's Land of the Dead. The zombies can actually like get together and devise a plan. It's like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
And Ben finds his way back into the house, but Harry won't open the door. Ben forces his way in and then gives Harry a beating. Well deserved, to be honest, because Harry had no reason. That's the thing. Does Harry actually want Ben to die? I don't feel like that makes sense.
I think he's conflicted on it, isn't he? Because he initially runs back in, and you can kind of understand his point of view. He objected to the plan in the first place, and it does go wrong. And it doesn't go wrong because of Harry. It goes wrong because Ben hadn't planned it out correctly. So that doesn't justify Harry locking him out. But you can kind of understand his point of view. And then he has the opportunity, doesn't he? Harry has the opportunity to lock the basement door. Yeah. And he sees Ben struggling at the other door, and he's conflicted. And then he goes and helps Ben, even though he just betrayed him.
Yes, that's right.
Which is, I love that contradiction where he's not totally a bad guy. Yeah.
Well, they said on the commentary, they said to Carl Hardman, who's playing him, they said, was the reason that you helped Ben barricade the door so he'd give you less of a beating afterwards? They said to get a softer beating, yeah, because
Yeah,
Ben,
yeah.
yeah, just to get, he knows he's going to get beaten up or whatever. And he's just like, oh, I'll soften it a bit by helping him. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean
it's interesting.
absolutely.
Yeah,
That's what I love. The interpersonal dynamics, the conflicts in this film, like in real life, they're so multifaceted. There's lots of different
yes,
opinions you can have about it.
yeah,
That works so well for drama. And I mean, forget the fact that Night of the Living Dead is a horror film or a zombie film. Just the human drama in it works better than most movies do generally. Yeah.
yeah, and the nuance and everything, as we said, it's
Yeah.
not black and white, as we were saying. Um, yeah, and then we get the scene again. I think this is quite a pivotal scene, and this is pretty horrific when you see the zombies start eating the bodies of Tom and Judy. They kind of cut to them. I think they kind of intercut. I think between Ben and Harry, and then the zombies.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of a comedy bit with the intestines because they just look like sausages. There's one guy who's kind of struggling to eat them, but when you actually see them eating, it's pretty grim. And then I want to talk about the music as well, just for a second. I've written down a sort of creepy bass throb music, and it includes breathing sounds as well.
All right. Yeah.
And something you'll be interested in, I can't remember if it's this point. At one point, the music has a screaming sound, a screaming voice. And I thought of you because I thought that's exactly the same as the opening of The Shining. There's that screaming, screeching that you said might be in sort of Native American voices.
Yeah.
It almost sounds exactly like it's almost the same recording, but I don't think it is. But I think the fact that they're using actually breathing and screaming on the soundtrack, again, it's very human, because they're human noises. I think
That's
it's very
interesting.
clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I can vaguely remember that being there now, but I didn't really make a note of it myself and my own study of the film. But I
Yeah.
suppose maybe there's an aspect of that where, because Tom and Judy just like die instantly, don't they? The truck explodes, and then you can actually see in the shot they're not even in the truck.
Oh, really? Yeah.
You just see the fire, and it's like they've just suddenly magically disappeared from the shot. Well, I guess they didn't have a budget to film people burning alive and stuff. And it's Tom and Judy that are being eaten, isn't it, in that scene?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe having that breathing and the screaming type noises, maybe that's sort of an implication about Tom and Judy's suffering.
As they were dying.
They don't actually show people getting eaten alive in the movie properly. They show the zombies eat dead bodies, but they don't show live subjects being eaten. So maybe that was a way of hinting at it.
Oh, you're right, actually. Yeah, because that's the difference in Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. They're way more gory because you're seeing people being eaten. You're right. Yeah, you do see a little bit. You see a little bit later with Karen and Harry, but we'll get to that in a sec. But yeah, so there's this kind of quite hypnotic music as well. And the thing I was going to say was that I joined Flickchart last year. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a thing where you can rank all your films, and I've actually managed to get pretty confident I've got every film I've ever seen that's even worth remembering. I got 1,500 films, and number one is Raging Bull. That's my favorite film of all time. Yeah. And when I was watching I got the DVD, and I think it's like 3 commentaries and loads of documentaries, and I'm one of those people. When I get a DVD, if it's a good film, I've got to suck up the whole lot. I've got to watch all the commentaries and everything. But on Raging Bull, what they did, they used animal noises, and they used noises like screeching glass. So, and also when he's throwing a punch, I think they used a melon for the actual sound of the punches, but they used elephants braying and hyenas screeching and things, which is something you'd never notice unless someone pointed it out.
I think I've only ever seen Raging Bull once, and it must have been 20, 25 years ago.
Wow.
And I think at that time, I knew it was a good film, but I was more interested in Taxi Driver and the Cape Fear remake and things like that. There was other Scorsese films that I was more preoccupied with. But yeah, there's definitely, Raging Bull definitely had a lot of good stuff. I mean, just thinking back to that one viewing, it was great. Yeah.
I mean, if you ever get the DVD or if you ever go back to the film, watch the documentaries that go along with it.
That is fantastic. Yeah.
It's one of the things where they really enhance it. it really enhanced your appreciation because there's loads of things that you wouldn't really notice. Like I had no idea about those sound effects, but they even used for one of the films where LaMotta gets a really bad beating. They used an animal breathing as opposed to a person breathing, and it was a huge animal. I don't know what they used, but it's that kind of you get that so much more deeper and louder breathing because they used an animal. So I mean, isn't it amazing?
Scorsese was absolutely the top of his game back then, wasn't he? You know, he was just producing one classic after another at the time. So
yeah, and De Niro as well. I mean,
yeah.
King of Comedy as well. That's a good one. Very underrated.
Yeah, and way better than Joker. Because Joker tries to rip it off on all kinds of levels, but now King is much more powerful.
I haven't seen Joker.
It's
all right.
Worth a watching. That's it.
All right, and then we get to sort of the final section of the film. They do a clever thing where the lights go out, so the film gets dark in both senses of the word. So the lights go out, and then the ghouls are gradually breaking through the barricades. As I said earlier, Harry grabs the gun and is obsessed with getting everyone down in the cellar, even when the ghouls. I suppose you could argue he's partly doing it because the ghouls are about to get into the house. Yeah. But I think it's far more just, I've got the gun, I'm in control.
Yeah.
So they manage to barricade it, and then you kind of know what's coming. Ben wrestles the gun and then shoots Harry, which again we could argue about whether he deserved it. To be honest, probably did, because he's almost like feeding them to the lions. The music kind of ratchets up. Another thing I thought was quite funny, Harry gets shot and his first instinct is to struggle to the cellar.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny, isn't it? Like his first instinct, he's dying and he's like, I've got to get to the cellar.
Yeah. But then once he gets down there, he's trying to get to his daughter.
That's right, yeah.
Which I thought was kind of gave a sweet element to him. Like, you're shot, you're dying, and I want to see my daughter for the last time before I die,
Oh, that may be the reason, yeah. You'd like to think that's the reason, wouldn't you? Yeah, that would be the
I can't think of any other reason why he'd try to get to his daughter.
I thought he's just obsessed with getting down to the cellar.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I'm kind of joking about that. Yeah, because as he's dying, the last thing is his hand reaching out sort of towards the daughter.
Yeah.
And then we get a very interesting moment and a very horrific moment. So Helen goes down to the cellar, and then Karen has died and is reanimated. She picks up this trowel, and again the music, this screeching music, and the look on her face. This is horrific. Again, it doesn't follow the rules. Like, why is a zombie suddenly picking up a trowel and killing their mother? So you have to think there must be, I think you mentioned it in the video, there must be some subliminal, this thing about a child killing their parents. I don't know.
I think it might have been in one of the commentaries for Living Dead. I think one of the people involved in it said all kids at some point want to kill the parents or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
I thought it was a bit harsh. But yeah, I mean, the scene is very powerful for that, isn't it? Having a kid kill the parent in a movie.
Yeah.
I guess if the kid had they probably couldn't get away at the time with say if the kid had bit the mother's jugular vein and all blood cut, that'd be too extreme. But having the trowel thing kill was what they could get away with,
I suppose they were going for a shock thing, but it is very shocking. I mean, it's really shocking. The music and the look on her face, Helen.
But it also something I think I really like about that moment is the zombies. I mean, having the child as the zombie, it sort of shows the difference between I don't know if I'm wording this correctly, but the how different the person is once they become a zombie. Because to go from being a sweet child to being this savage, brutal killer, it's quite a transformation to see a kid go through. It's interesting. Like zombie movies very rarely have child zombies, do they? I can't think of any
Yeah.
besides Night of the Living Dead. And
Yeah.
I think when the girl tries to bite Ben when she goes upstairs after she's killed her mother,
Yeah, and he shoves her, doesn't
he
he?
just
Yeah.
throws her on the couch, and he almost does it gently, like put the child down gently, even though she's
Yeah.
a zombie. He doesn't smash her head in like he does with other zombies, but
Yeah.
he would be justified in doing that. You know, he could just like bash the brains in.
Well,
So it's a funny one about kids in zombie movies. Why don't we have them? I think part of the reason is because even a kid being a zombie, we still identify with them as a kid.
hmm.
So we don't want to see our heroes killing kids, even though they're
Hmm.
zombies.
Well, I
I
think
think if some other zombie filmmakers came along and did something with that, they could do something quite powerful. Yeah.
maybe have the kid as the main zombie. I don't know. Yeah. But on that point, what was I going to say? Yeah, we got to remember as well in this world of these characters, no one's heard of a zombie. Like no one's ever
Mm.
heard of this weird thing of thing. I mean, I don't know. I suppose if we don't really need to analyze this, but in the world of these characters, they might have seen some old horror film and have some idea. But this is all new. Everybody's learning. We're learning the rules from the radio and the TV. And but something I picked up on, and you mentioned in your video, it happens with Barbara because she's killed by Johnny. Oh
Yeah.
well, he's
Their own
leading them
brother. Yeah.
exactly. And you made the point, and I picked up on this, that Helen, even though she knows Karen has become a zombie, and Ben knows he's a zombie, again, you can't quite divorce them from the fact that 2 minutes earlier when she was alive, she was a kid.
Mm.
And I think with Barbara, if you watch, I put this down to sort of dodgy acting, but I'm thinking she might have been told to do this. When Johnny appears, she almost absorbs herself into them. She almost lets herself be absorbed into it because she still thinks it's her brother, which is kind of natural in a way.
Yeah. It would be difficult, if there was someone you were so close to, a family member, and they suddenly became a zombie. Would
Yeah.
you, how would you be able to divorce yourself from the fact that it's no longer a relative?
Yeah.
It's a great little dynamic to have.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, that was such a powerful moment as well, because it brings the film full circle for her. I mean, each character's got their own weird, different arc. Each character's got their own unique story going on, and it's like the zombies mean different things to different characters. And to her, the zombies are like the angry dead coming back. It's an insult, and like it's almost like the brother kept insulting her and wanting to scare her at the start of the film, and now he's come back to do it in a much worse way at the end.
Yeah.
It's so sinister, the fact that comes back. Powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that flashed through my mind is you also get the first zombie from the graveyard.
Yeah, he shows up. The dad symbolizing zombie. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was thinking, has he been hanging out with Johnny for the last couple of hours? Because why do they appear at the same time? That doesn't make any sense.
They've been plotting what they're going to do to the girl,
Yeah. But it's very clever. And a nice little touch. The reason they had Johnny having the driving gloves on at the beginning is so the audience could easily identify him when he appears.
Yeah.
Because you kind of know it's him.
He doesn't have his
Barbara
glasses at the end, does he? I don't think.
No, I don't think he does. No, because I think they fell off when he fell at the beginning. Yeah. But obviously Barbara says, "Oh, Johnny." But I think just to confirm it to the audience, they have the driving gloves.
The gloves thing is great. It's just simple visual tricks like that. There's something I've become quite interested in this with costumes. Do you remember the Magnificent Seven, the Western?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I was watching that, and I was watching the more recent remake, because there's been lots of versions of it. And something I noticed that was powerful visually in the original Magnificent Seven film, each of the central characters has got a unique visual look, especially with color. So the lead villain, which was what's his name?
Eli Wallach.
Yeah. Great performance. He's got like a big hat and a red shirt that stands out a mile away in every shot he's in. There can be a battle scene going on, and it's him who's fighting in that corner of the screen. And Yul Brynner, Charles Bronson wears blue, and Steve McQueen wears pink shirt. And each character is visually distinct in the costume. not in a realistic way, but in a way where when there's a battle scene, you know who's fighting. And when I watched the remake of Magnificent Seven, I couldn't tell who was who in the battle scenes because everyone just wears black.
Oh, right.
And it just made me realize, if you go back through a lot of classic movies, making characters stand out visually by the costume is so important. And that ties in with what you said about the gloves thing. Yeah.
Well, in Once Upon a Time in the West, they did it with not to identify them, but each character had their own theme. So Charles Bronson was the harmonica. Do you remember? You had the harmonica music. I mean, obviously you don't need to identify him, but it was a theme. And Jason Robards had this sort of clip clopping, like ding, 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 this clip clop music. So yeah, very, very interesting. All right. So yeah, we're nearly at the end. So Barbara dies. So that of course
before you
go on, please.
Can I just say something that I wanted to try and get this in this conversation at some point, and Barbara's death is a good one for it. Okay. For me, like a true horror film typically should have a bad ending where it's not happy. If you have a happy ending, it's not really a horror film as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
This one has got a genuine bad ending, but not just the actual ending of the movie, but each character who dies in a very undignified way. Just as happens in life, people hardly ever have a dignified death in real life.
Right.
And the characters die in ways that are stupid, embarrassing, cruel. Barbara's death is horrible. She didn't deserve it. Yeah. Absolutely horrific to be eaten by her own brother and a gang of zombies outside.
Yeah.
And I think that is so powerful in horror. I get really bored of the cliche, even in action movies as well, of whenever a central character dies, they always have a glorious, I'm going to take half the enemies with me on my way out. And everyone, when they die, it's like, oh, they're off to Valhalla to live forever after them. And everyone will always remember them. I think death in movies is so more powerful when the deaths are undignified and painful and embarrassing, and it just gives a great sense of realism to do it that way. So that's something I love about Night of the Living Dead.
Very interesting. And also, I would say towards the end of the film, you get quite a lot of I don't know if irony is even the right word, but you know what I mean. Like Barbara gets killed by her brother. I mean, it's not ironic, but it's I don't know, horribly symbolic, let's call it. And then of course the two fantastic sort of last touches of the film is that of course Ben escapes down into the cellar, which is where Harry had suggested. And then so he goes down the cellar and Harry reanimates, and Ben, you kind of almost feel like he relishes the idea of killing Harry twice. He gets to shoot him again.
He shoots him multiple times, doesn't he? He shoots the dead body several times, wasting his bullets because he's so angry. He's so angry.
Yeah, that's it. But then he uses one bullet. Karen, again, he has to kill the kid, and then Helen as well, just see the eyes open. But then again, you get the humanity of Ben because he throws the gun away and then he just kind of puts his hand on his head like, what the hell have I just gone through? It's very human. And then we didn't mention they actually arrived earlier on the news. We get this sort of armed posse, the militia or whatever you'd call them, and these fantastic sort of documentary style TV interviews. So then you get the next morning, Ben wakes up and he can hear outside, he can hear the dogs and the guns, and this armed posse come, and then of course people who know the film will know what happens next. Ben comes up, and then very matter-of-factly, as you said, very undignified, they just said, oh, there's someone in that house, and they just shoot him. And all Ben's good work of survival has been undone in 1 second. And I don't know, I think even as a kid, I thought even as a 12 or 13-year-old kid, I was thinking that's trying to teach you something about life. I don't know. I feel like it was. There's
a truth to it. The good guy doesn't always come out well. The hero doesn't always come out well. The plans don't always work.
Absolutely.
The most savage, horrible things can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter what personal, wonderful traits you've got. Anything can happen to you. That's reality, you know.
Yeah. But the idea of all the,
God doesn't step in, you know.
yeah, well, you described it as a cosmic joke on your video. But also the idea that all your good work can be undone in a second. So I don't know. I suppose it's something almost weirdly inspirational. Just make the most of your bloody life, because it can get snuffed out in a
I'm
second.
sort of wondering whether to make sure there's no snipers just about to blow me out there, you know.
Or zombies. Or zombies.
Yeah,
Well, now, if you want zombies, just go to a shopping centre.
yeah.
That's-
Plenty of
Thanks,
other
Rob.
places you can go to find them as well.
Oh, sure, yeah. But shopping centre's a good one.
Mhm.
All right. And then, yeah, I mean, I just think this film just ends so fantastically, because it just kind of pours it on towards the end. And then right at the end, even after Ben's died, we get this very, very bizarre montage as the credits roll, this sort of photo montage, which quickly changes to video when you see this bonfire. And again, you can't really separate that from the civil rights issue, when you've got like
definitely.
you've got a posse and you've got hunting dogs, and then you've got a bonfire. Because apparently I think I was reading a book, and it was talking about how when you look back at history, you can't believe how people behaved who were exactly the same as us. It's the idea that 200 years ago, apparently people would bring their families to watch public executions. And you think, how can that happen? But also there was a book, and it was referencing a postcard, and it was someone in the South. It was a white guy in the South. And it was something like, "Oh, we had a great bonfire last night, hint, hint," which meant they'd been burning the bodies. Whether it had burned alive, we don't know. I imagine.
If I remember
probably
rightly, the
sometimes.
script for Night of the Living Dead, the ending, if I remember rightly, was a little bit different. It's almost like they deliberately, although they hadn't changed the Ben character throughout the movie and his behavior, I think they had tweaked the ending to get that civil rights thing in there. That's the way it appeared to me. I can't remember what, there was some differences in the script, but I can't remember what they were.
Yeah, I just feel like that can't be an accident. I mean, surely, but and then you get the stuff you see them.
Actually, you know what? Sorry,
Go on.
this is. I just thought it. I'd never even put this in my original analysis, and I never thought of it. But I just don't want to lose this thought. There are
Okay.
no black zombies in the film.
Ah, yes, of
Not
course.
one.
Yes.
You know, that's
Yeah,
pretty interesting, isn't it?
that is. Yeah, you get. I was noticing as well that the zombies are a kind of a. Other than that, they're a cross section in terms of ages, and you get the naked zombie, you get a guy in a suit. But that's very interesting.
Yeah,
You said
it's
that,
weird
because
that most of society is represented, but not racially. You
that's
know,
very interesting. Because
yeah.
you get there's one of the first zombies, the one he kills with a tire iron, sort of looks a bit Mexican or Latino or something. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
I can hardly remember it. But you
Yeah.
would think if they got a black guy in the lead role, maybe they could have had some. Well, I mean, there's no black zombies, and there's also no black people among the ones who are hunting the zombies later on.
Oh, of course.
You know, so he's very much singled out as the only black person in the entire movie, isn't it?
Well, that's interesting. And of course, you never get to see him reanimate either. So that he would have been a black zombie, of course, but you never get to see it because the film ends.
That's a
Um,
good one, yeah, because he gets shot in the head, so his brain is dead right off the bat. So
Okay. So if you, yeah, let me get these rules worked out, because I keep getting
the
confused
rule
about
in
this.
it was that if you destroy the brain, you destroy the zombie. So if someone gets a brain destroyed when they die,
Ah.
they don't become a zombie. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you had to destroy the brain once they'd reanimated. Okay, I understand. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't. Like you said, I mean, Romero breaks his own rules, so whatever. We just interpret them as best we
Because
can.
you know what, the zombie rules are so interesting. There's so many dynamics to it. I mean, like in some movies, you get skeletons who, like, Jason and the Argonauts, skeletons come out the ground and fight. Are they zombies? No, they're not zombies. Why?
Right.
Because they haven't got enough flesh on the bones. Okay, well, how much flesh do you need to have on the bones before it becomes a zombie? You know what I mean? There's all these weird questions around it,
Yeah.
Um,
But the fact that it changes halfway through, and as we said, we get the kid with a trowel. I mean, that's that's behaviour completely unlike any other. So I think there's way more. I think there's way more that's going on that they even said in this commentary, because there's actually two commentaries. I listened to one of them, and they were very much playing it all down. But I think it's very, very clever stuff.
Well, you know what? I mean, I mentioned before I've been writing this study on the black hole film, which is very underrated and has got all kinds of mad themes in it. And I've been noticing there's certain movies in history, and Night of the Living Dead is one of them, The Black Hole, Alien as well, and Wizard of Oz, things like that. These are movies where there isn't a single auteur voice behind the movie, and you get like a strong collaboration going on with the crew and the cast, and everyone's throwing in their ideas, but they're all working more or less from the same point of view, but each person throws in little nuances that add to the whole pot. And so you end up with like a classic movie. Like The Wizard of Oz had something like 6 different directors working on it at different points. And back then, sometimes the studios, if they wanted to have a movie written, they would, like with The Wizard of Oz, if I remember rightly, what they did was they knew they wanted to make a Wizard of Oz movie. So they approached something like 12 different writers, all independent of each other, and said, do me a script. All those 12 writers do a script, and then the studio looks at them all and says, well, which one's the best? Which ones have got the best bits? And then that gets filtered down, and new script versions are made to take the best ideas from those. And the amount of people who are involved in The Wizard of Oz creatively along the way, you can't find a single source and say, this is the person who can tell us what the movie's all about. And so, yeah, I think Night of the Living Dead has got that because, I mean, obviously Romero was brilliant, and most of it comes from him, but all these other players involved in it, they all brought things to the table, so it ends up being a fantastically multi-layered film that no one person can summarize.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, the great thing is they don't have to explain everything, And then 50 years later, someone like yourself and other people analyzing films, they get to have all kinds of fun with, I mean, I don't want to go on this tangent because we've been about 2 hours already, but with The Shining, just in a kind of if you can answer this briefly, how much of all those subliminals, and you've just had another Shining video, it's incredible. You've done another 3 hours on it. Yeah. How much of that did Kubrick intend, do you think? Without going specifics, what would you say? Would Kubrick be there in his final days going, I'm going to give them a few more nuggets to...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
That's not a message from beyond, is it?
No, yes, it's Stanley. It's Stanley.
So I didn't intend any of it. It's just a ghost story,
Yeah, that was brilliant timing.
Yeah, that is so funny. That how much of it was intended? Well, I mean, I would not say this of other filmmakers generally, but with Kubrick, I do think a lot of it was intended. Most of it, actually. As you've seen my videos before, I've been to the Kubrick archives several times. How many filmmakers have arranged for when I die, all my production materials and everything, they're all going to be made public in a sort of museum in London where everyone can go and research how the movies were made. Even Hitchcock didn't do that. And, when you go to those archives and you look at like the amount of research that was done, like, for example, Full Metal Jacket, a lot of people have made a fuss about the street signs in the first half of the movie being clearly in Britain. I think people have complained about that, and it's obviously not in America or something like that. But when you go to the Kubrick archives, there is a huge box full of research materials on street signs. It's everything's in there, and I'm like, so am I seriously expected to believe that Kubrick had an entire box full of research material on street signs and then accidentally put the wrong ones clearly into the film? That to me is a leap of logic, So he was very, very unique in the amount of research he did and the level of detail. I mean, he had the world Guinness record for most number of takes in The Shining, and
poor Scatman Crothers was in tears,
why the hell is he
literally,
filming 148 takes?
It's
And
crazy.
everyone on the crew is asking why more takes, and he's like, let's go again. You know, it's when you look at the production history, it's clear that he was doing all kinds of stuff. You know,
If I could just,
it's so hard for people to believe though, because so few people think with that level of complexity and detail. A lot of people are just like, hang on, you're attributing the guy as being a god. And I suppose to some people that is like being a god, but there are people in the world who have a level of intelligence and genius that dwarfs the rest of us. And I look at all the research and Kubrick stuff, and I think, my God, this guy is like almost fucking not human, you know. It's scary to think there's people in the world who are that intelligent, but it's true.
well, I want to do, just before we finish this, I want to share a few things with you and the audience, because you'll get a kick out of this. I've been very lucky to speak to Dan Richter. Dan Richter played Moonwatcher, who throws the bone in the air, you know, the famous jump cut. He's had a unique life, because he was John and Yoko's personal assistant for about 3 years, and he worked with Stanley Kubrick. And he told me so many great stories, but I'll just share a couple with you. First of all, they asked, he came up with this phrase to describe Kubrick and John Lennon as well as another species, which is kind of what you were just saying. Like their mind just doesn't quite work. And I would put Orson Welles in that category probably as well. The other thing he said is, I asked Dan if Stanley Kubrick ever did any drugs. And he said, well, we tried to get him to take LSD once. This is brilliant. They said, oh, go on, Stanley, try it. And Stanley Kubrick said, yeah, the only reason I don't want to take LSD is that I'm worried if I take it, I'll lose all the unique mind that I've already got. Because Stanley Kubrick was well aware of the mind he had. He said, if I take LSD, I might change and I might lose all this intellectual capabilities.
An understandable view to have, you know.
Yeah, but Dan Richter said Stanley was really a nice guy, and he just had a few quirks. And I said, you know, did he ever have any insecurities? And he said, well, he was very bad at confronting people. So he told this very funny story that Stanley and his wife had a maid who was terrible, like a housekeeper, but he couldn't bring himself to fire them. So he rung up one of his friends who worked on 2001 and said, can you do me a favor? Like, I've got this really awful maid. Is there any chance you could ring her up and fire her for me? Brilliant. So, you know, with the genius.
I've heard other examples of him getting other people to do his dirty work as well.
Yeah. Well, I think on 2001, you know the woman, the air stewardess, the famous thing with a pen that's floating in the air. I think something happened between her and Kubrick just stopped speaking to her one day on the set and spoke to her through someone else. It's kind of, I don't think that puts him in a great light, but you know, with a genius,
nobody's perfect, are they?
Yeah.
I mean, I've read multiple Kubrick biographies, and there's times where I come across things in his biographies, and I'm like, that's a bit harsh, Stanley. You know? Why would you be like that? You know? I mean, there's a lot of people who really don't like him because he could be manipulative at times. You know, he treated everything like a big chess game, and it's like all the people on the crew and the cast were all like pawns to be used for whatever his aims were, but he wouldn't tell people what the aims were. And especially the relationships with writers, again and again, writing collaborators complaining, he wouldn't tell me what he was really up to. He manipulated me into doing this, blah, blah. I've come across so much of this stuff. And the famous one is Stephen King. He wasn't actually a writing collaborator, but Kubrick said a lot of embarrassing stuff, insulting stuff to Stephen King over the phone and things like that. And you get those stories again and again. You know, you do realize this guy wasn't perfect. You know, he had flaws, and maybe, I mean, he was a genius. I've got no doubt about that. But maybe a person who's a genius at that level, maybe it plays on their ego. And you know, sometimes when a person finds it too easy to manipulate others, maybe they find it hard to stop themselves or something. Because he used to run rings around everybody mentally who he worked with. Some of it was really funny. One of my favorite ones is Malcolm McDowell, you know, Clockwork Orange, and his stories about working with Kubrick. And after the film had wrapped, Malcolm McDowell had to do I think he was hired to do 2 weeks of voice narration stuff for the film. So he was with Stanley every day for that. And they were playing table tennis after time. Have you read about this?
No, tell me.
So funny, this. Kubrick, being the grandmaster chess player type that he is, he's always got a meta game going on. Yeah. And so 50% of the time was spent playing table tennis, and Malcolm McDowell used to beat him quite a lot.
Yeah.
And when it came, they actually the voice narration period doubled to like I think it was a month. And at the end of it, when Malcolm McDowell got paid, he only got paid for 2 weeks, and he complained. He said, "We did this for a month." He said, Kubrick said back to him, half of it was the work, the other half was table tennis.
You don't get paid for playing table tennis.
But then the industry is full of people on crews who take the piss, who want to drag a production out, slow it down so that they can get paid more. British crews can be terrible for that. And there's a Full Metal Jacket behind the scenes moment where he's arguing with people about tea breaks. He's like, "You just had a tea break at such and such a time. What, you want a complimentary tea break now?" And all this. So, you know.
Yeah, it's a tough business though, isn't it? Yeah. You have to be tough, I guess, to work in the movie business. But I say with the geniuses, you get a bit. I would say Marlon Brando, I think, was an acting genius, and you know, probably some of the stories about him are true, some of them are not. But yeah, he said nobody's perfect. You know, anyway, I'd almost forgotten we were doing Light of the Living Dead. And we went into a 20-minute Kubrick bubble there.
Well, that's what happens when you ask about Kubrick.
I know, yeah. Shall I ask you another question? No, we're off mic, I will. All right, I think we'll bring it to the end. So we got to the end of the film. I think it's clear to the audience that we both love this film and that it's got lots of layers. And one of the joys of film podcasting, because I've got this podcast and I appear on a couple of others as a guest, I've got kind of a regular gig doing that, is that with the best films, when you watch the commentary and then even during a conversation, the film almost gets better.
Yeah.
So it enhances it. And it's amazing. I've done films where the film has literally improved during the conversation, which I can kind of get with this one, you know, because we've been sparking off each other. So,
well, I mean, as you know, I did I think it was a 1-hour video on it, but just this conversation, loads of extra things have come up there I've never thought of before. So yeah,
it's good stuff.
Awesome,
just a quick question before we go. So you've been doing the film analysis, I think you said since about 2007 or 8, something like that. Are you retaining your enthusiasm? Because you've got a ridiculous work rate. I mean, even the stuff you put out for free would probably finish most people in terms of work rate. But you've got loads of other stuff on your website, collativelearning.com. Yeah. Have you still got the same enthusiasm?
Oh yeah.
I thought so.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's kind of like studying movies is an endless subject, because movies are about everything, every aspect of life. Well, almost every aspect of life. There's a movie made about. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, you know, by studying movies, I get to explore science issues. Like I've just been writing this thing on the movie The Black Hole, and a big chunk of that is going to be about physicist theories on black holes. You know, so I went and read loads of science stuff on that. So that I could do a better review of the movie. And any movie that comes up, it raises a load of real life subjects. So absolutely, for me, this is like an area of study that allows me to just branch off into almost anything I want. So that's why I don't get bored of it. Yeah. And the only thing the only thing I think I do would like to change is, I'm not one of these people who likes to just be sat at my computer all the time or sat alone writing. I'm actually quite a sociable person. You know, you've been out for a drink with me and stuff. You know, I'm not one of the classic nerd types who can't socially operate and so hides away in an intellectual world. You know, if I go to a party, I don't really go to parties and get drunk anymore because of all of it. If I did, I would be mixing with everybody and talking about it. And I can drop the intellectual stuff and just engage people on a very visceral level. I mean, I'm from Liverpool. You got no choice. And so sometimes I feel like I would like to take all this film analysis type stuff and this intellectual stuff and expand it into something that becomes a lot more personal and involves a lot more direct interaction with people. I had ideas about maybe like getting like half a dozen just average people, just film people, and just saying like, we're all going to sit and watch a movie together and we're going to record and we're all going to discuss straight after the movie what we all think, you know, and that make it a lot more social, things like that. So yeah, that's the area where sometimes I do get a little bit bored of doing it the way that I do it. It's a bit isolated.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that you and I share a big interest in psychology. And I think psychology is, obviously there are certain rules of psychology that have been set, but it's also evolving. You know, we're learning more and more. And, you know, just in the last, I don't know, 10 years, we've had social media, smartphones, COVID. Those three things alone, you know, the way that people have reacted to them, it's sort of thickened the plot of human behavior, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like you say, you know, it's a mystery. It's mysterious. And the other great thing, of course, with films is that films are being made every year. I mean, we'd never catch up. You know, if we wanted to review every film that made, or not that we would, of course, but we're never going to catch up. So there's endless material, really, isn't there? And I find myself going back. I mean, I was following modern stuff till about 2010. And to be perfectly honest, the last 12 years I've gone backwards because I've discovered stuff on YouTube and whatever. And I tend to go back to these old films. But I think I've always been into old films, actually.
Yeah. It's almost like that's like the Wild West, where I think there was a lot more exploration used to go on with movies back then. And nowadays it seems like the production of movies is too controlled. There's too much public relations built into it. There's too much of filmmakers trying to anticipate the critics and try and make a movie that the critics won't attack them about. And I think, going back to the old classic movies, I think a lot of the time the filmmakers had more guts and they were more willing to do something that the critics wouldn't enjoy. Because I mean, I suppose back then, critical, paid critic reactions didn't last long. They would be in the newspapers and on TV, and then it's gone. And then the movie has its own life after that. And everyone forgets all the critical reviews. And now the critical reviews are forever there online. So new movie gets torn to pieces and accused of stuff. That movie is tarnished online forever by those critics. And most of the time, the critics get the movies completely fucking wrong anyway, pardon my French. It's so sad because I think movie filmmaking has been largely destroyed. I think critics have done a lot to destroy it. They're not very forgiving. They're not open-minded. They increasingly want movies to fit into an extremely narrow view of the world and not willing to entertain different points of view. So
well, I think the other thing with social media, because everything's instant reactions, not necessarily from critics but from fans, tend to be knee-jerk reactions. Because you need time with a good film. You need time to absorb it, like, you know. But because our culture seems to have been drawn into this low attention span, immediate, you know, react, and everything's got to be in the moment. But let's end on a positive note. Whatever's happening to the film industry at the moment, we've got, 100 years or more of amazing stuff, and it's so much of it has got multiple watch value, including this film. So,
imagine what it would be like if we didn't have all those movies and we only had the kind of movies we have now. God. Yeah. I mean, there are still great movies being made.
Yes, there are.
Just not very often.
Yeah. All right. Listen, this has been amazing. I think we've done over 2 hours, so we've had a good stab. But while you're here, I had to ask you loads of stuff that wasn't just connected to this film. So, just so your collativelearning.com is your website. Can you just give us your YouTube channels as well?
It was Collative Learning again. That's the main one. There's a Rob Ager channel, Ager. And I've got another channel which I can't even remember the name of it off.
Ager Bites.
Ager Bytes, yeah, Bytes.
That's it.
Yeah, I haven't posted on that for a long time. But yeah, the vast majority of stuff is linked on the main website, collativelearning.com. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, thank you very much. We will get you on again. Yeah, let's do Citizen Kane sometime.
Yeah.
This is only monthly, and I've got the next few months already backed up. But at some point, we'll do Citizen Kane.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn the recording off, and thanks to everyone. Stay on the line. Thanks to everyone for listening. Goodbye.